hello, everyone. We have a very interesting guest today who's doing some really amazing things here in Dayton. Mr. John Pawelski, and he is the founder of Full Circle Recovery Services here in Dayton, an organization he started in 2017 and is making just amazing contributions to the citizens and community of Dayton. So I hope you enjoy the interview. It was quite inspirational for me, and John and I connected on a number of things, which I believe the potential for a very unique and empowering collaboration we will be investigating. So along that lines, again, I hope you enjoy the episode. And this is me with John Pawelski. Take care. Enjoy. Bye-bye.
One of my skills is problem solving, and I'm able to put myself in the shoes of the other person.
Yeah.
And I see myself through your eyes, and so because of that, I know what you need because I'm seeing this through your eyes.
And we're live today on Imagine Fitting In with John Pawelski. Welcome, John.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Normally I just kind of shoot right in, but tell me a little bit about, because I came across your I think it was through Facebook, and it's a very near and dear to my heart, I think, your efforts. So can you just tell me a little synopsis about Full Circle, like what it does for the community?
Yeah, so Full Circle is a behavioral health agency, but what we believe in is doing the full wraparound services. What we find is that a lot of times agencies can get themselves caught into the menu that I'm presenting, and you can pick what you want off the menu, but sometimes that's not exactly what the person needs, right? And
not targeted enough.
Yeah, and so the wraparound services, as a quick example, what does child support have to do with recovery? Well, here's the problem. You go through 4 months, 6 months of recovery. You're doing really well. You've been completely clean for 4 to 6 months. You've worked your work record up to the point where now you get a job making $850 a week, more than you've made in years and years. You got your own money. This is wonderful. You get your first paycheck. And, of course, Uncle Sam says, hey, I deserve part of that. And they take a nice chunk of it. And then your child support that you could care less about during the 8 years you were on the street is now not only built up to the point where you have to pay what you had to pay, but now that in arrears kicks in, and now 2/3 of your bring home pay is taken away from you in additional. So 98% of all people in that position, when they get their first check after making $850 a week and they bring home $232, say, I've got to work under the table. And the problem then is you go find somebody who's willing to pay you under the table. What does that mean? That means that somebody who has a normal basis is just paying you under the table means they're avoiding taxes. It means that they're not quite as scrupulous as you should be. That means the likelihood is they're going to take advantage of you in some way.
Right.
And it just really opens up a whole category that all could have been solved had a case manager taken the time during those 4 to 6 months to deal with the back child support, bring it up to a manageable. There's programs out there that'll give $2,000 or $2,500 towards the back. If you give so much, you pay so much, then they pay so much. And so really understanding what your obstacles are, what your issues are, what is it going to take to succeed,
right,
and that kind of thing. And that's really the wraparound piece. Of course, we do very intense drug treatment as well.
Sure.
We do groups, individuals, but we try to, our goal is not to graduate. That is never the goal. It's not live today. It's not graduate. That isn't our ultimate goal.
Continual process that you will want to.
Long-term recovery. Mm-hmm. That's the goal, is long-term recovery.
Two thoughts. I can see where that under table stuff can lead to right where, like, almost back on the street type thing. Like, okay, I'm hustling, and then where's my world? Mm-hmm. And then the other thing you mentioned was the recovery service services, and it sounds like you're trying to make sure you kind of, once you create this beacon of light for this individual, that they don't lose sight of it.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's a continuing. So that's awesome. So again, I welcome you here today.
Thank you.
And I understand that you created Full Circle. This was your concept.
I did. It was actually on a motorcycle trip. Quick backstory. I was a missionary's kid since I was born. We lived first 3 years of my life in Canada. I was born in Buffalo so that I'd be born in the United States. First 3 years were in Canada as missionaries. Then we went to a small town in Mexico, 300 miles straight south of the border. There was no electricity, no running water, no paved streets. There was 3 cars in the entire town. It was a very poor but wonderful place to grow up. And so I was there until I was 13.
In Mexico.
In Mexico.
And do you remember the city?
San Salvador, Zacatecas, Mexico.
Okay. I have one of my best friends is from Mexico City and lives in Chicago.
Okay.
But so you had a real unique experience, an international, a worldly, like when you hear a lot of people talking about, you don't understand how the rest of the world lives, and it may seem unapproachable here or doable at times here, but it's really almost some of the best thing going around the world. And I can aspire to that because I can relate to that because I've been to like 34 countries. I've been around. So, when you step out, you have that sense of appreciation. So I'm going to take a little step back here. And again, I thank you for coming and spend time with us. Imagine Fitting In podcast is all about mentors, healthy lives, and community. I'm a fitness professional a long time. This podcast is dedicated in the memory of my late nephew, Ian Jankowski. So he was a hell of a spirit, and we know that all those individuals that you see, their spirit is there waiting to be, right, unfolded and nurtured properly. So what I like to do, John, is just kind of back up and get deeper with you, like what, we're all about finding out like the mentors, right? Because you're obviously your full circle program is going to have like an array of targeted mentors, it sounds like, for these individuals at whatever given time to kind of target, which is awesome. So tell me a little bit about like, where were you born? Where do you call home today? And maybe expand a little bit about like your parents, what they did, and that upbringing in Mexico was very interesting.
So I was born in Buffalo, New York. We were living in Canada at the time. And then when I was 3, moved to Mexico, like I said. And one of the things that was really important for my father, even though he had the qualifications, the education, the licensure, he could have been a very high-end leader in Mexico. It was important for him not to do that. It was important for him to support the local pastorship. He had master's degree in theology. He had all of the qualifications to be, could have been a bishop in the church down there, but he chose not to be support of the local folks.
When you said a leader, you're talking about like a community level,
Well, as pastor, he could have been a regional pastor. He could have been bishop in the church. He could have been a lot of things.
Okay.
Holding that position as that leader, and instead he chose to be the support to the local folks and teach them and guide them.
Really on the ground.
Yes.
So he really, you probably, him doing that, you probably saw a lot as a kid.
Yes.
Right,
and a lot of mentoring on his part.
Sure.
Of the local pastors, of the youth. He would have them work in the field, and he would go out there with them, and that's when they would practice their scripture learning as they were getting ready for a competition at the conference, as an example. He would take turns when one would rest, then they would ask the questions and learn in that capacity.
And the competition was learning.
So they would go over questions, kind of like a trivia kind of thing with the Bible, but you had this certain book of the Bible that you would learn, right?
Get in their contest. Yeah. It's a little bit like, okay, there's a stake in there. Let's go. Let's compete.
Right.
Okay, that's cool.
Right.
Yeah.
And so learning in that process with them working as opposed to simply lecturing was always what he was about, is working in the...
Sure. Now, two questions. Was that really targeted just to all the youth, both male and female? And then how's the role your mom play?
So mom was a tremendous children's leader, youth leader. She was tremendous at telling stories, right? She would take either Bible stories or just general stories in general that would have a theme to them, and she would enact, and she would have a set at the church for the youth, and she would have she was going to clean house, and she would go through, and then she'd pick up a rug, and there would be a spider, and then she would lay out a lesson that came with that, right? And under a rug, sometimes we have things that are hidden that we bring out, and then she would find something else. Oh, she would scream. And of course, all the
She sounds like a really creative, creative writer, and
yes,
right, and obviously, do you remember how your parents met? Because it sounds like a very dynamic duo.
I do. So my parents were from. My mom was from Ohio, from Englewood, Ohio, near
Just
Dayton.
nearby, yeah.
And then my dad was in Sorrento, Illinois, which is near St. Louis, Missouri. And Greenville College is very close to Sorrento, Christian college. My mom then went to go to school there, and my dad was in school, and he saw her and observed her, and he said, my goal is to go out with the best of the best, and if I can't get number one, then we'll go from there. So he asked who he felt was number one in the entire college, which was my mom.
Whoa.
Said, would you be interested in going to the junior senior with me? And she said, I believe I would. And he said, you would?
With hidden intentions.
Yeah. So that's where that started, and they began to date, and eventually got married. They both graduated from Greenville College.
Nice.
And on their wedding day, my dad was ordained as a minister, and then they were both ordained as missionaries that same day. They then went to Cuba, immediately to Cuba, and they were in Cuba in...
What year was that?
That would have been in 1958. They were there when Castro came in. He was coming into Havana, and Cuatro Caminos is just a couple of miles away from them, and that's where the conquering army was coming through. And so my dad grabbed a handful of gospel tracts. He stood by the road, and as Castro's army came in to take over Cuba, he handed them tracts, and one of the soldiers, big beard, Cuban soldier.
This is the story he told you?
Yeah, and he said he took the tract, and he said, what's this? And he said, it's a gospel tract. And my mom said, boy, this would be a great opportunity to take a picture. And so she took a picture, wanted to take a picture. And the soldier said to my dad, here, you hold my gun. And Dad said, no, I don't want to hold the gun. He says, you hold this. So my mom has a picture of my dad holding an M16 from the Cuban soldier, and the Cuban soldier is holding a gospel tract. So that kind of boldness, right?
Sure.
And being able to say, here's what I stand for, and I'm here to serve. They then came back from Cuba. He finished seminary then, and then went to Canada and then to Mexico.
So are you, how many are you in your family? You have siblings?
I have 3 siblings, so there's 6 of us total, counting mom and dad.
And where did you sit in the mix?
I was number 2. My sister is older, and then I have 2 younger brothers.
Okay, and were they all had that same experience?
Yes, they had. Now, my youngest was still very young when we came back from Mexico, so he didn't speak as fluently as we do, but still speaks Spanish, and actually,
right, your Spanish is very good.
Continues to do work there. So
okay, nice. And so, you called Dayton home.
So we returned then. My grandpa was pastoring a small church here in Dayton, and my father felt called to come back and take over that church for him as he got older. And so he's been pastoring since 1976, pastoring a church in North Dayton, and continues to pastor there. It's on Herman Avenue, 835 Herman Avenue, right off of Webster and Kiwi area, right where 75 and 4 meet. It's about a block from there.
Okay. I'll tell you a little story about my... every time anybody mentions Kiwi or Leo Street.
Okay.
At Kiwi and Leo, my grandfather, my dad's father, opened up a bar in 1934. Wow. And it was open until 2007. But anyway, my father grew up above that bar. Wow. Back in the day, and my dad was, as you can see, the artwork around you. This is all my work. My father was a very creative guy, very insightful. Was so curious that he merged into. He was raised Roman Catholic, but he also merged into Eastern philosophy. Okay. If you see that piece behind you, it's called Enthuse. That is actually my mother Roman Catholic, and my father's influence on me on the Eastern philosophies. So I've been very interested, on a side note, very interested in all the top big 5 religions when I was younger, when I was 21. Yeah. So, when you're curious, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, but getting back to you, so you're here, and like, what's okay? So so down there now, did the parish there? Did they live nearby? That's where their parish was, or they
back up here in Ohio?
Yes.
Yeah. So they would live right across the alley.
Okay.
And so the church, of course, we'd take care of the church, and my dad took very little money from the church, so he had to work full time.
Okay.
As my mom did. They were learning disability tutors,
very honorable
teachers,
gentlemen. Sounds like.
Yeah, and worked full time for the church then, and part time for the school system.
Nice.
And then when I graduated high school in 1980, the day after I graduated, I started working for the city of Dayton in the golf course.
Nice.
And worked there for a few years. Took the test for the police department and passed and went through the academy. And so most of my career, almost 20 years, was served on the Dayton Police Department.
Oh.
And I was 12 years.
Thank you for your service.
In this, you're very welcome. And was just a few blocks from here. The Dayton side, the 2nd district, was my district for about 12 years.
Oh, wow.
So
okay, what years was that?
That would have been, I joined the police department in 86, so that would have been 87 to 99.
Okay. Well, I took off to Chicago, so I wasn't around. I slipped out at 84. What I was going to say is, like, let me ask you, John. I mean, you sound like a really dynamic guy, and obviously you are, I would just say flat out, like, you definitely have a mission. And did you know what you wanted to be when you were a kid? And did that experience, was that so, like, forming? How old were you when you were, like, just really, when you experienced being down in Mexico? Was that, like, coming of age and stuff? And how old were you?
So I would have been from 3 to 13.
Okay,
I was down
there you go.
3. And then I didn't know what career I wanted to do. What I did know was that I didn't like the poverty side of help. I enjoyed the help. I liked seeing people helped. But I said there's got to be a different way of doing it than to just pass the plate and hope for the best.
Give them character, work, and all that, right? Earn their keep and stuff, And
so,
structure.
And so had very high work ethic very early on, and people say, what are you striving for? And it's like, I'm kind of running from poverty, not running towards anything else. And so it's not that I have some goals, but I see sustainability in things. Mm-hmm. And, the biggest swing in business of income is -$1 to +$1. If you lose $1, you'll eventually go bankrupt. If you gain $1 a year, it's unlimited what your growth is. So to get it to a positive piece, it doesn't have to be, maximum profit earnings and all that.
Right.
But if you can make a
just on the
program
plus
sustainable,
side.
You can then multiply it everywhere, and you don't have to worry about depending on other people to give. And so we don't depend so much on the grants and the gifts and the fundraising as much as we say what is there. We earn that process, and the part that we don't get reimbursed for, we figure out how to pay for that. Mm-hmm. We're very efficient in how we do things.
Nice.
We ask a lot of our employees, and so we become sustainable.
So you're just referencing full circle.
Correct.
Like you're
correct.
Right.
Yep.
So let me ask you, what elementary schools and high school did you? So you're 13. Did you get back here?
So I went to school. Elementary school was Héroes de México.
Yes.
And so I went with the local children at the time, and then when I got home, my parents, my mom I did homeschooling because she didn't want us to only get the Spanish version of things.
Got it.
When I was in 5th grade, we went over the Civil War, Mexico and not Civil War, but the Mexican-American War.
Right.
And I thought since it was Texas, USA, that we must have won the war, right? But they teach it differently.
Of course.
And they teach that actually these evil Northerners came down to take over the country.
It's all in the stories.
And even though they were the underdogs,
Sure.
they won the battle. And then the General Santa Anna was celebrating at the top of the mountain, but he'd gotten so drunk he came down the wrong side. They tortured him, burned his feet at the stake until he signed over all of Mexico. And so it was not a great time to be the only American kid in that school. at the time that we did that.
Those lessons.
So
Wow.
one of the
I was a standout.
one of the boys, as we went through the recess,
Yeah.
he came by and stabbed me with a pencil. He said, "This is for Mexico," and stabbed me with a pencil.
God.
And then at recess, the boys took me out, forced me to go out away from the school, and we had big red fire ants and mounds out there in Mexico. And so they beat the mound
Oh, my
until they
God.
had the ants just swarming.
Yes.
And they held me over the
Oh,
pile. My feet
brutal.
swelled up and had 34 bites. But the next day, we were studying something else. We were all friends again, and everything was fine from that point on.
He remembers the number.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, so then you get back. Let me ask you. So did you get back to like high school here, like when you're
8th grade.
8th grade? And so where'd you go to 8th grade? And this is in Dayton?
Dayton Christian.
Dayton Christian? And then how about high school?
And that's Dayton Christian as well.
Oh, okay, okay. And I always like to ask you this. Do you remember any when you got into high school? And I mean, this is kind of a key forming years, where the peer pressure, blah, blah, blah. Did you have any teachers or individuals that just really, it sounds like you had just such a great dynamic and adventurous and international and just like almost not mind-blowing, but just so expansive compared to the average American experience at young age, formative years, and that your perspective is just completely like worldly compared to most. Did you have any other teachers or like people that influenced you during high school?
Absolutely. And the thing that Mexico taught me probably more than anything else, we up here in the United States, we would say that if you were to form, the average person were to make a list of needs list, they would say, well, you got to have a roof over your head. You have to have transportation to the hospital. You got to have medication covered. Mm-hmm. You have to have food covered. You have to have wall-to-wall carpet.
Excuse me a second. Just turn, if you either shift or you can turn it. Yeah,
wall-to-wall carpet.
Yeah.
Right? You got to have air conditioning in the summertime. You got to have heat in the wintertime. Those are all on my needs list.
Right. Essentials.
What I learned in Mexico was those are not needs. Indoor plumbing isn't a need. We didn't have it. Running water, not a need. We didn't have it. We had to boil our water to drink it. Mm-hmm. Heat in the wintertime. You didn't have to have everything. We went and had a kerosene lamp that we would light every night, fill it up every night and light it, and that was our light, and we burned candles. And so it was interesting to see the difference of what people felt was absolutely had to have.
Right.
And I realized, no, you don't need most of those things. And it gave me an edge.
Right. You know what's ironic is that how many people in this day and age, they work really hard, and then they go and figure out how many creature comforts they can take camping.
Yeah. Yeah.
You feel me?
Exactly.
It's like, wait, you're trying to bring that with you, the house? Aren't you supposed to like kind of make the most of, nature and kind of raw? I have to tell you this is like, because I'm glad I've got some, open flames for you in your honor. That, the human body, they say the old story goes, as soon as the chair was created and the king would sit on his throne, that was the end of the physical wellness of most human beings, because you're not designed to sit.
Interesting.
And I bring that fire analogy of right around the campfire, and I want to just mention this because I think it's a powerful kind of representation of essence what you're doing with these young people. And I'll primarily talk about men because I'm a big Joseph Campbell fan, and the whole sitting around the campfire, right? You don't sit, you squat. Mm-hmm. Either cooking or whatever. After you're squatting around the campfire, that's what I actually have my clients try to attempt to get them to be able to do. So that being said, they're sitting around the campfire, right? When young men come of age, right? When they're all of a sudden, the elders see the boys like looking at the girls like they're looking at them a little differently. So their hormones are kicking in. Now the young girls have their menstruation, this physical episode that happens. They have no control. Mm-hmm. And that's what, like, okay, now you're a woman. You have that conversation, that connection of like that, the woman. Well, the young men, they don't have any kind of physical like thing happen. So we know why, right? Young men, if they don't have strong mentors or male energy in a group environment, supportive to show them that, yeah, here we're gonna show you what it is to be a man, because the psychological level, in essence, is that a young man's relationship with his father, he's ultimately, competing for the same love as his mother, until that is broken, that bond, right? There's no stronger bond in the world than the mother and her child. Now the male, and that's why we see it ends up in all the running wild boys and the gangs, is that they're trying to go out and impress each other and say, no, I know what's to be a man. Let me see how stupid I can get, how much attention I can get. And they don't know that framework. So sitting around the campfire in the indigenous peoples, the elders would actually make masks all over their face and make them look really scary. And they would have this was worked out with the mother and ahead of time. They know what's going to happen. All right, we're going to come in the middle of the night, and we're going to be like these raving lunatic males, and we're just going to grab your son and pull him out of his bed. And what's going to happen? The boy's going to go, what are you doing? What are you doing? Where are you taking me? Freaking out. Mom, mother, mommy, whatever, right? And they're like, the mother plays the act. Oh, no, don't take my boy. And they literally take him out to the cold. They build a fire. They sit around. He's naked. He can almost be just like limited, cold, uncomfortable, scared. He's with all these men within the community of his village. And they literally do the old thing of the blood brother type thing, right? The metaphor is, right? They cut the finger, drip the blood in, and they give the boy the bowl and say, here, now you drink from this cup, and you are one of us. And that's that kind of initiation of like that physical, like, okay, I got your attention. This is what you do. And then if you stay along with us, other elders and other young warriors, you will mature and take responsibility. And so I see that in day to day. I went through that. So the Imagine Fitting In podcast is all about mentors for especially young men.
Yeah.
To give them value. And even in a structured, well-structured home, a loving mother and a father that's trying or whatever. And if the young man's got angst and he doesn't know how to kind of like break free, and there's that military route, there's that, wild kid route. Is a musician, going on these avenues of these, typical, not tradition, like, okay, what are you doing? Instead of this kind of like, I don't want to put this across as demeaning at all, but like the puritanical thought of like, this is what you have to do, this is what you need to do, as opposed to, hey, that's not what you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. You have a lot of options, and let's create this framework, which I've been fascinated by. The fact that this indigenous stories back in the day, before the big five religions, it's been shown geological around the world, like before the big five religions, when these peoples were on the other side of the planet, they had no way to contact each other. But all the archaeological finds and the cave writings on the wall, they were all basically honoring Mother Earth, Father Sky. Mm-hmm. And they had these same storytelling, right? The first drawings, communication, blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't only till, right, these tribes, you can imagine, right, developing, like, bump into each other. And they may have this concept of, well, we're going to fight you because we need resources, and we don't know you, and they're too freaked out about each other. We don't know each other. And one conquers the other, enslaves them. And what happens? Well, my God, right? Our tradition, our tribe, our God is like, we're going to hold on to that till the day we die. Mm-hmm. Sound familiar? Mm-hmm. So I like to tell that story because on a modern day, this is what's kind of key, I believe, in terms of the young men. And so I can only imagine the stories you have as a police officer, because I was probably one that escaped a lot. I didn't get quite caught a couple things or whatever, a few here. So I did my due diligence of trying to stay away from that craziness. Mm-hmm. But I want to thank you for letting me share that, because I just want to, in terms of that, because I'm very respectful, and I've spent time deep in Mexico, and I've went to have you ever heard of I'm trying to think of the word. I went down to deep in Mexico near Guatemala border, and the Dalai Lama showed up there, and he actually did a sweat lodge. So I've done a couple sweat lodges with that practice. Yeah. Anyway, so I was able to be raised Roman Catholic, a Christian foundation, which everybody needs a foundation to start with. Mm-hmm. just like that whole like puritanical thing, like, right, okay, no, this is a frame, right? This is a frame. Go ahead and be on a proper path for you. And I think what you mentioned in your full circle services, right? Your target, that individual. And it's like, it's great to throw out all these great things, but then the reality of the situation, right? There's so many factors in terms of like, mindset and capability and situation. So that's my little story.
And to just kind of finish up the question that you asked me about the mentors, there was two that I would say stood out. Mr. Wilson was my geometry and algebra 2 teacher, and I loved math. Math was my thing, but he taught me that excellence is its own reward, meaning that you're not looking for a 93 or a 94 to get to the A. You're looking for doing the best you possibly can. And if I had 105 average because I did every extra credit point, it wasn't to get the points. There was nothing to gain from that, but to understand the process and to strive beyond minimums, to strive beyond even when it was just for the excellence side, was worth it. And then second teacher was Miss Miller, who actually was my mother's teacher back in Randolph out in Englewood. She had retired from the public school system and taught at Dayton Christian. And I think my high school sums up what she said as a devotional one morning. And she said, in Proverbs, it talks about the snow and the rain, the benefits of the snow and the rain. And she said, a lot of people think, oh, that's the same because snow's water, it's the same thing. And she goes, but it isn't. She goes, when it rains, the earth gets immediate help from it, immediate life from it, immediate benefit. She said the snow may sit there for 2 weeks. It may sit there for 2 months. But eventually, when it melts, that's when you get the snow. She goes, you're going to see a lot through high school. You're going to get a lot of snow in high school. It makes no sense to you. It does you no good. Does you no benefit. But later on in life, if you've remembered those bits of wisdom, you've remembered those mentors that have taught you things that didn't make sense at the time,
right?
It'll make sense as that snow melts. And I've very much been a lot of that high school.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, that's a great analogy. Yeah. I like that a lot. And you're making me think of my high school days. And on the surface, like you said, that grade point average, or I think there's lots to talk about this in terms of just that actual grade you get on the test or whatever, how they put things in front of you in terms of how are you actually fully developing and really applying yourself to not only do the best you can, but also make more discoveries along the way about your true essence and that framework. Yeah. And it sounds like full circle is, it's an amazing story that you've shared so far, and I can see why you're where you're at right now, and I'm very impressed. So let me ask you, where do you put your energy in your teens and your 20s when you're like going, okay, you're getting ready to step out to the world almost and create your own life?
So I graduated when I was 17, started working for the city, and saw the path of which to kind of climb my way up there. Started as a seasonal at the golf course, then went to what they call part-time permanent, where you were kept all year, but you're still 35 hours or whatever. And then I was actually working with a plumber, and at Kettering, the city of Dayton owns a golf course out Kettering, and it's actually City of Dayton Golf Course, right? And so anyway, I was working there. It was 34 degrees. It was misty, super, super cold. The city plumber had asked for me because I did whatever he said. I worked with him. I worked whatever. And,
bring that kid that listens.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was really fun for me because I was able to learn from him. But I came in extremely cold, trying to warm up for my 15-minute break, and I saw on the board that there was a job posting for police officer. And I said, wow, I actually qualify for all this. Unfortunately, the test is when I work. And my boss said, no, the way the city does it is if you're going for a promotion, then they'll give you a half a day off, go home, get a shower, go down and take the test.
Oh, sweet.
And you get to do that on the clock. And I said, I believe I'll be applying for everything that I qualify for. And so I took about 8 different tests over the period. The police officer was the first one. So when I was in the academy, they called me for several different tree trimmer and equipment operator and all those. But I really liked what the police offered because it was able to do a lot of different skill sets, right? So it's problem solving. One of my skills is problem solving, and I'm able to put myself in the shoes of the other person. And I don't
Front
think
line.
not
Like on the
everybody
front
can
line.
do that.
Yeah.
And I see myself through your eyes. And so because of that, I know what you need because I'm seeing this through your eyes.
I see your,
And that became
I hear your father in that.
really helpful. Yeah. And that became really helpful in the police department because it wasn't just what have you violated, therefore what punishment do you get, but what is going to ultimately help you. You live in my district, right? You do the things I'm going to constantly be dealing with. How can I solve this problem longer term other than just immediate?
Addressing, yeah. Right? Instead of, it's like the analogy of, I see people, I actually see more people with pain management, right? And when people are addressing symptoms.
Yes.
So, it's people are quick to judge and throw a Band-Aid on or say, you stop that, and whatever. And there's like the symptom. But why'd that symptom occur?
Yeah.
What's led up to that? And so, people have this, it's amazing, right? And I'm sure you've seen it on the front line with individuals and situations where, you have one seemingly like put together family or some kind of something went sideways for whatever reason, for, emotional, stupid, or whatever, it's logical, whatever. And then so another extreme of like, really hardship, like survival raw, maybe a mental health issue, blah, blah, blah. And it's ultimately like, okay, there's another scenario. There's another person. They are human beings, but it's a whole, like you're going back to your full circle target approach. There's also many factors that you have to sort through. And I'm excited to get into now more.
Yeah, and treating symptoms never leads to a cure, right? You only continue to treat symptoms.
Exactly.
And so if finding what the real issue is, and I was a little more creative on the police department maybe than some were. I remember working this district, actually. There was a mother that called me desperate. Her 8-year-old son wouldn't go to school. And I said, well, buddy, you're going to have to go. He wouldn't get up and so forth. So I said, here's what we're going to do. Starting tomorrow morning, this is my shift. I said, ma'am, you call me if he doesn't go to school. And I said, young man, I'm going to come and get you and put you in a cruiser however you are. You're not going to do your hair. You're not going to do anything else. You're going to go however I find you. So my suggestion is you go ahead and go. So the next day, of course, she calls. He won't get up. No problem. Went and got him. He had pajamas on. Told him put some pants on. Oh, I got to do my hair. No, time's up to do your hair. That was 15 minutes ago. Took him as he was to school. A couple days, then he went to school. 4th day again, didn't show up. Took him as he was, but that was the last time I took him to school. And he continued to have good attendance because once he went regularly, he found out that all the stuff he hated about school wasn't happening anymore because he was attending, he was there on time, he was paying attention, he was prepared for it,
right? And
all of a sudden he really started to like school. So simple things like that.
It's a conditioning process.
Yeah,
it's just I think I go back to my practice. I have have conversations like, listen, if you come into say like the gym, right? Like you talk about like you have a situation, and like you said, he conditioned himself into a pattern. That just like seemingly like this is what I'm supposed to do. But the outcomes are not pleasant. And then it takes a person like me where I'm going, okay, you don't want to come into the gym and go do a single, do one exercise on every single body part because I look at a person like you're not a symmetrical human being. And whatever your circumstances, right, your present symptoms are, is that they can be a mailman or whatever their work is, that they could be morphed in a certain position where they can create more problems for themselves. So it's interesting that, like you said, right, you're allowing them to like, okay, stop, right, stop what you're doing. This is what we're going to do right now, those first handful of sessions. So I just relate to it so much because I tell my clients it's going to take me about 6 sessions just to understand who you are, where you're at, and what I think you need to kind of, right? Yeah. And it's an art form. Like you sound like you're a great communicator. You were consistent, right? And it's a conditioning process. So I want to get into what, the full circle recovery services, like a part of your from other recovery programs. How does your program address the unique needs of individuals seeking the support?
While in the police department, I started a security company, Moonlight Security, and we did security for some behavioral health clinics. And what I was taught by my field training officer, which I then passed on to my guards, was whether I'm arresting you for homicide or a bag of pot, I'm going to treat you with the same respect, right? My job is to arrest, ticket, whatever it is, but it isn't to humiliate you. It isn't to be the judge, jury, and executioner. It's to be the police officer. And so I respect you until you don't. And there was times where you insisted that you wanted to fight. I'm ready, right? But if you didn't, I'm more than happy to de-escalate the situation and give you full respect all the way. And so as my guards, imagine somebody comes in for treatment for the first day, right? They have been 8 years on the street. They're not sure they want to do this. They know they want to change, but they're not sure this is going to do any good. They come in timid, and the first thing they see is a guy dressed in military uniform and goes, "Hey, you know the drill, up against the wall, pal." You right away, you remember 6 months ago when you had that run-in with the police, and 2 years ago when you were with the guy that had, and all these bad memories come back to you.
It's like the PTSD.
On the other hand,
ultimately,
yes, and on the other hand, you come in and you go, "Oh boy, here's the security." And they say, "I don't believe I've seen you. What's your name, John?" "Okay, John, here's the deal. I do have to pat you down or wand you.
Right.
You can't bring any medicines in. You can't bring any weapons in, as you can understand. But before I wand you, do you have any questions?" "No, not really." "Okay, if you're ready, go ahead and put your arms up, and I wand you. Have a fantastic day." You go into that meeting thinking, "Whoa, that was different. Yes. Maybe this whole situation is going to be different. Maybe I can absorb." A little thing like the contact with the front door security guard can make a difference on whether that treatment is successful. And so we begin to do security at a lot of places because they like the way our approach was. Right. And so one of the gentlemen said that ran, one of the CEOs of one of the companies said, "Hey, I want to expand. Would you run the business? You've been used to business. I'll handle everything clinical." So I started a partnership with him, and then his partner said, "Wait a minute, you can't go off and compete with us." And so he ended up leaving me. I didn't know the difference between an LCDC2, a CDCA, a chemical dependency counselor assistant, an RN, an LPN. I didn't know any of the acronyms, right? I knew the police acronyms. I didn't know anything about the clinical acronyms because that wasn't my lane. And so I said, I can either do what I've seen. At that time, this was about 2016. We were the number one epicenter. Montgomery County was the epicenter for overdose in the opiate crisis. And so they said that on average, people that start a program, finish a 90-day program, only 3% finish. And so I said, can you imagine hiring an electrician that says, "Hey, I'm the best of the best. You hired the right guy." As a matter of fact, about 3% of the time, I get the wires right. Right? Would you say, "Sure, wire my house"?
Right.
And the only level of 3% accuracy that we accept maybe is from the weatherman, and that's barely, right? We still complain about that. But I said, wait a minute, I'm no genius. I can't perfect treatment. But what I can do is I can improve on 3%. And I know that if I do this right and I figure out the problem-solving piece of it, I know that I can improve on 3%. So I began to ask hundreds of people, nurses, clients, people that ran treatment centers, clinicians, what are the obstacles to recovery? Why is it that 3% of people that start a program, only 3% finish? And the number one answer to the whole thing was housing. And I said, okay, interesting. So I went to the Adamus board and I said, "Hey guys, all this struggle that you've had with treatment, I've solved your problem. It's homelessness." And they said, "Oh, rookie, sit down. It's not homelessness." They said housing. Two big things different in that. If you're homeless, there's all kinds of programs and grants that kick in, and you're able to do some things. But most people that are in active addiction, a lot of them aren't homeless. Some are. But a lot of them are in bad housing situations, right?
Right.
You burned the bridge with your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle. And so who are you going to stay with? Your buddy Joe that you went to high school with.
Accept your energy and similar energy.
And he's still doing meth every day. You can crash in the basement. So now I go to a wonderful treatment center. They treat me like gold for 15 hours a week. And then the other 153 hours, I'm with my high school buddy Joe.
Yeah,
there's no way, right? And so I said, great. And so that's where we begin to start with the housing piece. We now partner with numerous nonprofits. And we've been able to actually line up the housing piece and be able to finance through investors and whatnot to have the housing, which then the nonprofits run. They're all certified with Ohio Recovery Housing.
So you were like a really on the ground facilitator in that bridge that was too far for them to make that transition from that person, the experience you just shared with the housing and all that, to them, and build that bridge and keep it open. And keep that beacon of light on.
And it had to be sustainable, right?
Right.
Because if not, then whenever the grant goes away, you're out of business.
Collapse.
And all these people are dependent on. So,
wow. Just a little break here. Another great episode. I hope you are enjoying Imagine Fitting In podcast. And just a reminder here, please remember to hit the subscribe button because we love to feel you a part of our Imagine Fitting In family. And if you want to become a brand ambassador, we'd love it if you would share this link on social media, through your email, all your friends. You can help with us with donations, any small donation, big or large, whatever you can manage, to help encourage us and support our efforts here. And you'll find that link in the show notes. And finally, again, a reminder, please refer guests to us. You can find me and contact me at thebalanceprofessor@gmail.com. Love to hear from you. All right? So I hope you continue enjoying Imagine Fitting In. All right? Till next time.
I took a motorcycle trip in 2017. My buddy and I, over 8 years' time, went at all 48 states in the United States, rode our Harleys. We both owned businesses, and so we would take a week and just go do it. It was a wonderful time. But we rode all the way to California, just over 6,000 miles of riding. A lot of time to think. Then at night at the hotel, I would pull my computer out, work on my PowerPoint presentation. Next day, that's not going to work. Let me fix this. And so I came back with kind of a general plan of things being scheduled, of things being structured, of things being in place.
Sure.
So that when they come in, they don't have to ask a lot of questions, right? Because nobody to this day, nobody has put on their application when we say, why are you interested in Full Circle? None of them have said, because of my wonderful decision-making thus far, right? And so we start with making almost no decisions. We tell you what time to get up. We tell you what van to get on. We tell you what time to see the counselor. We tell you what time to start group. We tell you what time to go back home. We tell you what time, all that.
Just initial steps.
But then as you get stable and are ready to go to the next level, guess what? You start making some of those decisions. Now you decide whether you want to stay in the evening or go somewhere.
Right.
You decide what meetings you want to go to. Next level and next level and next level. And eventually you're making all of your own decisions, but with a good basis in the background. And so that was kind of the key in 2017. In 2018, we were able to find our first housing to be able to put. It was 3 doubles that were right next to each other, had been renovated, and the gentleman rented all 6 units to us. And that was the start of it. That was on a small street that was in my district. That's actually in this district. There was 15 houses that were vacant on that street.
What street was that?
That on Parnell. It's right off of Huffman Avenue.
Okay.
Huffman and just down from Smithville.
Okay.
And it's 1 block long is all this street is. In 2018, when we started, that street, 100 feet from those doubles, was the first drug-related homicide in the city. Didn't know that at the time, but it was meant to be, right? We're on the street that has 15 vacants. And the first homicide of that year, drug-related. And so as we begin to progress, we had the 24 beds available. They filled up very quickly. People liked the program. We continued to buy some of the vacants. We now own 14 of those addresses on that block.
At that point, were you just, that was kind of a really unique for your efforts were completely unique. Nobody else was really doing that.
Yes, and everybody said you're never going to make it. You don't get reimbursed for housing. You don't get reimbursed for some of these things.
Now, who said that?
Everybody that was in the field currently, because the typical thing, and nothing against them, wonderful people.
So I'm referencing like when you say those attempts that were up here, and you have the people that you're trying to help, and you're facilitating here,
Yep.
and you're trying to do this, and they're just speaking outside. You know, like there's still a problem, right? Obviously, and it keeps them busy, and you're doing this, and they're going to question what your tactics are, but you see it yourself. Obviously, you wouldn't continue unless you saw progress,
Right.
and you were developing. And then, so how that relationship, did you finally crack through those people that were like, you're never going to make it? Like, you did the proving ground?
Yeah. So when we started, everybody said, you've got to take the billing sheet and just work off the billing sheet. If it's not on the billing sheet, you don't do it. And I said, well, what if they need it? That's not your problem. I said, it kind of is, right? It's a little bit like going to a Kia dealership and you need a big pickup truck. The guy's going to sell you all kinds of stuff on the lot. He's going to sell everything he has on the lot. None of it fits your needs.
Right.
If it isn't going to fit your needs, then we've got to think differently.
So you were tailoring.
And so now that started in 2018, March 18th of 2018 was when we first began the housing piece. Now, 6 years later, almost 7 years later, almost every agency in Dayton has some form of housing, some form of connection with a agency that does housing, some connection to be able to provide sober housing. And so we have changed the mindset. Right, everybody does it their own way, but we've changed the mindset.
Did you catch their attention? And
We
were
did.
you were like like at this point where, did they ask you to consult? Did they ask? They were just curious observers, or how did they integrate with you? Those people that were doubters, and now all of a sudden you're doing it.
And all the above. So some came to me and said, "How are you doing this? We see that you have newer vans. We see that you have people successful. We see that you have people graduating. We see that you're able to renovate these houses. So it has to be working."
Right.
So what's going on? Others tried to hire our employees and say, "Hey, we'll give you $5 more if you just tell me all the secrets," kind of thing, right?
Welcome to corporate America.
But here's the thing, right? Flattery is the greatest form of compliment.
Oh.
All we wanted was people in long-term recovery. I don't have to do it all myself.
Man. I know that firsthand.
So as we saw that begin to happen, then other people said, "Well, we can do that in a little bit of a twist. We can do this a little bit differently." But now, even though it was almost impossible in 2017 to get sober housing in Dayton, now there's literally hundreds of beds available in the city of Dayton. City of Dayton was the epicenter.
Right.
But they chose to be also aware of the problem and get a mindset of working on the problem. And that's what sets Dayton apart, I think. There's over 300 meetings every single week. So there's one for whatever your mindset is, whatever your desire is, whether it's NA, AA, whether it's 12-step, whatever the process is, there's groups for you and support because the city is very, very supportive of recovery.
Now, I'm going to jump in here for a second.
Sure.
As I mentioned to you earlier, maybe before we started or when we just started, that I have a particular program that I created that it directly, obviously, engages the physical plane of the body, right? And we know there's that emotional plane. We know there's that ethics, right? Law-abiding community ethos, and then obviously you're based and come from that spiritual plane, obviously. So, from an education standpoint, the science has been proven for many, many years in terms of exercising the brain and movement and the physiology, right? In terms of challenges, right? And you go take I'm sure when you took your Dayton Police Officer test, they had you challenged on physically, whatever, and capability and decision making under pressure, right? Quick action, right? Blah, 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 blah. So my program is basically, it's called Beamwork. And if you look over, it's over there. I can't know if you can see that across there. But it's basically a balance beam that sits on the floor that I was educated when I was a young lad. I was about 28. I left advertising because I was tired of selling all the things I didn't believe in, prescription drugs and cigarettes and alcohol and a lot of just really crap food. I was in Chicago. So I had some of my mentors, and this was my mentor story, was a kinesiologist, a track and field coach, and Michael Jordan's trainer up in Chicago. Shout out to Tim Grover. They changed my life. So my essence, I'm an artist. My passion is fitness. When I'm getting to a point of linking with you is these holistic practices and you targeting, right? Love to explore more conversations on how I can introduce the program. And basically it can work like this. You can create small teams and groups, little subtle competition. You have sharp people physically, you have sharp people kind of mentally side, various planes, emotional, physical, spiritual, because we have all kinds of, right? We have all kinds of targets, and we're talking about individuals, right? Targeting those types of individuals and their struggles. And you're basically the counselors, or if it's anybody from talking about, they want to teach them about nutrition or, caring for themselves, or their physiology, their wellness, their, fitness, their just health overall, right? They can put in these concepts and literally teach them how to any subject. It can be applied to any subject matter. So the point being is that when you have that person's attention, and it's sort of like training a high-end athlete, or that police officer on the street, as you get older, there's a physical plane, right, of having to physically be able to like run down somebody or be in a situation to capacity to last, right? Right? But decision making at a split second and how fast. That's a part of that, that physiological makeup in terms of wellness and moving. So it's a movement-based program. And what's happening when you're actually in the act of balancing? Your brain is working at a higher level. If you have your heart rate up a little higher and I'm giving you information, I'm putting you in a circumstance, and I have you do, say, a kind of a squat kind of position or like a type of a lunge kind of step out position, and repeat that over and over while I'm talking about a particular concept or idea, you are going to remember that for the rest of your life. And it's very powerful. It's proven. The science is behind it. So I want to finish up my comment here because I'm definitely would like to collaborate with you, network with you in the future, in the near future, to explore potential collaborations. But
so one of the things, and if you've been in many countries, that I'm sure you've had this experience where you've gone on a path, right? And there's no, United States, you have big clear signs for 3 miles out, North 75 is this way, North 75 is that.
Right.
But in other countries, not so much. You've got a little path that you have to make.
There's the sun through the trees.
Yeah. And so you have this path that you come to, and it's a very subtle Y, barely even drifts off. And then you go down an hour down the road and you go, whoa, I've gone the wrong path. Many times we try to train people to recognize an hour into the wrong path that they've gone the wrong path and teach them how to turn around or force themselves to turn around and go back. What we want to train people, and I think I'm hearing you say this is the exact piece, learn to make the right decision at the why. And it's the little decisions that don't seem like they matter, right? But if you're learning and you perfect your ability to be able to, not when you're at 75 degrees, there's no saving your body from falling off the beam.
Right, exactly. Right? Yes.
It's not even when your body moves. It's when you start to feel the balance going is when you have to make that decision. And so I love that aspect and that idea. And one of the things that Medicaid particularly, and so that we focus on Medicaid, not because folks that have insurance that we couldn't help, but insurance pays much, much, much more than Medicaid. But that also leads to all kinds of options, right? All kinds of beach properties, lakefront properties, all the things. I'm not a big butt kisser, and so I believe that I want to go to the people that really need it, know they need it, and want help.
Yes.
And so Medicaid is where we are with that. But they have really opened up the mind of understanding more than just doing group, and that's it. They have understand that life skills. They've understood peer support. They've encouraged these kinds of things that years ago was not even open to possibilities. Now, in a life skill situation, you realize that if I take you through a grocery store and teach you how to buy nutritious things, or I take you into a kitchen and I show you, all your cooking skills amount to you can't even boil water without burning it, right? If I can teach you how to cook some basic stuff, how does that help you in recovery? Well, now nobody can afford the finances to eat out 3 times a day. right? You have to be able to learn some of those skills, which then helps you financially, which then helps you stay in recovery, which ultimately prevents your relapse. And so some of what you have to teach, I would love to talk to you at another time of
Yes.
more detail
So
of how you could have an army of people doing what you're doing.
yeah, and I am actually primed and ready. This has been created. I created this program in 2009.
Okay.
So sometimes I'm an Aquarius, so I tend to think 70 years in the future. So two things. The analogy back on that beam, right? When you're that why.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the things that the individual will learn in that critical situation is, where are they standing now? What do we call home? This is where you're at now. We've just come to this Y in the road. And this is, you're going to make that split decision. You're going to make that decision, right? Stop, take a moment, right? And assess what are the potential outcomes of what you know, what you don't know. And then I relate that also to what an author, Thomas Friedman, wrote in his book years ago about the 21st century. And you're talking about going back to skills, right? Really teaching them, right, how to be at home, how to structure that home, how to care for yourself at home. And the 3 C's are critical thinking, problem solving, communication, and collaboration. So that's what I bring with my program. And you can work with individuals, depending on the professional. On that physical plane, I guarantee I could empower an individual working with a special situation individual, group environment, create team building, create relationship building, communication, a collaboration, showing, just standing out. And I think this is on my episode 5, where my cousin interviewed me on episode 12. And if you'd like to learn more about me and listeners, to listen to episode 12, and that's all about my big story.
Okay.
But I think it's almost a crime that our school systems have not grown or changed or open to any other concept. Like, you go back to that score. Is that kid showing up and trying and doing his best to discover his ultimate talents and self and interest? Not that's a 98 in a particular subject that he doesn't care for, and that's going to rate him and judge him in terms of like where he should go, no, where he should not go. So that's I'm very passionate about. So anyway, let's get back to your recovery and the families you're supporting, loved ones, the process. So what advice would you give to someone considering recovery, or to families supporting loved ones through the process?
So the one thing that we have not figured out, we have tremendous brain power in our director's table and our management and our staff. But the one thing that we still have not figured out is how to get somebody help that doesn't want it, right? We can present things to them. We can try to be there when they hit rock bottom. We can try to do a lot of things convincing somebody that they want help, but forcing somebody to get help does not work in our program. And so the one thing I would encourage, either the person who is ready, certainly reach out and we can get you in very quickly. Our motto is we have one bed left, meaning that we don't ever close our doors to somebody an opportunity. We understand that if you want treatment, your window is not a 3-week window that we can pencil you in an appointment. It's probably within a few minutes, and we've got to get you somewhere, get you to one of our partners, get you in the overnight, comfort room so that you can get in and get treated the next morning and get into the program. And so that's one of the big pieces is when you're ready, certainly reach out. If you're a family member, be supportive. Don't expect them because you just decide, I turn right, and it's super easy for me.
Right.
It's not as easy for everybody else, right?
Assuming.
And you automatically think that because it's not a problem for you, it shouldn't be a problem for them. You just gotta put your mind to it, you know. And yet I would challenge those folks that have a family member that is in active addiction and they can't understand why they stay there. I would like to see their diet, their exercise routine, their work ethics. I bet we could find some things that other people are saying, dude, why aren't you doing this? It's super easy. And yet they're not doing it, right?
Right.
It's easy to pick on the addiction piece because it's a societal problem.
Right.
But we all, as part of our habit, is we have things that are hard for us and things that are easy for us, right? Food. I ate well, but I didn't have plenty of food growing up. And so food's always a problem for me. And I have to work really hard at not overeating and because I didn't have that privilege when I was younger. And so that becomes a problem for me. Other things are super easy. Smoking, people struggle for years to man, it's not a problem for me. I have no desire for it, no
Right.
issue, right?
Well, that's interesting
So, yeah.
that you're putting out your own personal, right? Your
Yeah.
own, right, historical personal perspective on just that, right? Food, which
Mm-hmm.
stays with you for like a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that it sounds like I got a question for you. It sounds like all your efforts that you've really perfected an art form that you're on those front lines when you say that person has to want it, and then you have this sounds like you have this unique approach of being able to like offer it up without judgment, and you're trying to relate that to the families as well, so that during that process, and then so they can literally like go, yeah, this is my decision. Now, what's interesting to me is that all the cast of characters and the resources that you are obviously trying to bridge and keep that bridge open and help to get to the next level of help is that I think that would be, I would say that my program would be one of those some planks on that bridge to help empower and magnify the potential of, let's say somebody really needs to work with a particular individual in a situation and they just can't get them to, actually take time to look deep into a part of that on a psychological level or whatever. That's just like, there's a roadblock. Something's a roadblock. Now, instead of just trying to beat the hammer, right, trying to beat the message in and try to convince this person that for whatever reason, they're not quite ready, when you almost distract them and create like, okay, well, you don't want to really go there, but you're really enjoying all this, right? ABC, but we really want you to get to DEF. And that's our ultimate goal because we know it's going to be powerful for you as much as they want to, right, accept or like, take that next step. So it's interesting to me that, the work that you did to develop and frontline stuff is amazing. So I compliment you on that. The ability to continue on when you hear above, like, no, that won't work, and your fortitude was fantastic. And I think that any situation like this, no matter where the point the person is, that additional vehicles to empower all these levels of its nutrition, psychological, home and work and training, the fundamentals, right? To put that in perspective. So that's kind of like what I see my program as, like this empowered vehicle that's unique that could be adapted to each of these avenues of these specialists, that they can kind of like, through their own creativity. It's fascinating because, we can do basic math problems, or we can do a story, we can do literature, we can do science, we can do any kind of topic. And you get these people active and collaborating, communicating, and having a little competition. Remember, you talked about once you throw competition in there, it's like, hey, I mean, if I'll take out my when I do demonstrations of my beam, the work, right? I train high performance athletes for injury prevention, but basically my program it's all about function. If you don't have proper function, just like if you don't know how to hold your household together, you're not going to be really be able to excel in life or in that sport, right? So if there's something just not quite right. And so I applaud you for all your efforts. You're definitely a dynamic guy. It's been powerful. How many years has Full Circle Recovery Services been in existence? And then when did you feel like just recently that you're peaking? Because it sounds like you've made a transition. You've come to a place where, are you looking for another level, or is it like you're just trying to keep expanding the numbers of your current, like I'm curious on where your head's at.
So let me go back just for a second. I want to address something real quick on giving people that home base for themselves, and it's different for different people. I remember case manager said to me one time, they said, we have this client, who has 3 children, and her goal is to have her own place with her 3 children. And I said, great. So you're the job case manager. What are you doing? Oh, we're working at getting her a part-time job at McDonald's. And I said, guys, nothing against working at McDonald's, right? It can be a wonderful place to work. But that isn't going to get you to where your goal is. And my daughter has transverse myelitis. She's partially paralyzed from the waist down. Just suddenly happened. It wasn't an injury. But she's partially paralyzed, and so she can't move. Doesn't have fine motor skills from the waist down. And so when this happened in 5th grade, and so when she was in high school in her junior year, I guess, preparing for senior year, they gave a aptitude test and see what 3 careers would be the best for you to do, right? Number 1 was a professional basketball player. Number 2 was a police officer. Number 3 was a physical therapist. Now, she was in learning disabilities class. She was one of the siblings that we adopted in, and she could hardly walk. So why would you tell her she could do basketball? Well, she enjoyed basketball. She was the mascot for the high school team. So that was her interest.
Sure.
But that wasn't the realistic piece to put her.
Right.
Her family was police officers. Her uncle, her brothers,
A lot
her
of pride,
dad.
a lot of pride in
And so she had
family
the pride
connection.
in that, but
yeah.
that wasn't the avenue that was going to
Right.
get her there, right? And so my point is that we take people where they are. We're very realistic. We don't say, "Oh, you're not going to be able to accomplish much, so go to it." Absolutely not. But we maximize your journey,
Yes.
your ability, because you need to know what you can stand at and where you can go in the process. And as far as the peaking, here's what I would relate that to. If you have a small flashlight and you go into a big dark room, right, and you look around and you see things, finally you realize I've reached the limit of what this flashlight will do. Some people will then say, great, let's settle within what this flashlight gives me. My inside desire says, give me a bigger flashlight, right? Because I think there's more out there. And we had 22 graduates one time at one graduation. And I said to the crowd, you have a hard time understanding why we continue to grow. We're now at 14 different locations across the state. Why do we grow? It isn't because we want to make the business bigger. But had we stayed at those 3 houses that we had originally, we were graduating 3 people every 2 months. Right? So on the average, 2 people a month, roughly. So I said, we now have 22 people this month. I want you, in your mind, to pick out the 20 people that don't deserve to be here. Because had we not been willing to grow, 20 of these people would not have been up here graduating drug-free, alcohol-free for 5 entire months with a future ahead of them, knowing that they can continue this future. I said, I can't pick them out. And until I can pick out the 20 that don't deserve it, I have to keep growing to the point of helping more and helping that piece. So to answer your question, no, I don't see this as finite. I just need a bigger flashlight. We need to now look at other pools, other areas. We're looking at mental health in the school system, of getting some of these adolescents at an early age to be able to feel free to talk about things. It's amazing when you have athletes and non-athletes, and you go to play a kickball game, the athletes get picked first.
Sure.
The last 3 kids that get picked are kind of left off, no action. But what happens if you take the lowest 2 in every grade and you put 20 of those 2 at a time, right? You take 20 of the last picked people together.
Yes.
They play a different game. But boy, they still compete, they still thrive, they have more team effort and are willing to help others behind them. And so what we're looking at is getting the last 2 picked, not the first 2. They'll be fine.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Let's get those last 2, put them together, teach them how to be able to share what's going on with their life, be able to see their home life. How can we help with that piece and really work on that piece? So we're excited for the next step for Full Circle in that category.
So I don't know if this is like the universe provides, but I will tell you that I always say this. So remember I told you about creating these teams, right? And you have on the playground, right? You go out there. There was always that guy. Usually it was a guy, kid, boy. Nobody can catch. That's Michael Jordan. And then there's a little pack, maybe a few, close to him, can't catch him. Behind them, another 5, 7, 10. Behind them, the big masses. Then there's like 6, 3, and maybe 1. And that one at the end, Bill Gates, potentially. On the physical plane. Who knows, right? On a intellectual whatever plane, right? Just physicality, right? We're blessed with kinetic awareness or not, right? It's a thing. You feel me?
Yeah.
So my point and you hit it right on this flow, man. I couldn't even set this up even better. That we take this little team and we put those high level maybe athletes that maybe they're not academically or they have their own challenges, but they're on the physical plane, they're just amazing. And then you have these other two that are not very physically challenged, but they have other qualities, and you team them up. Yeah. So they play off each other. So if you have this physical competition challenge that involves intellect and decision-making and process, and you team them people up, they would never be on the same team. I remember, I'll tell you that, my story, I was picked after a couple girls. So that runs true to me, right? I mean, when I was a kid on the street ball, I was like an amazing wide receiver. I loved it. But as soon as that was our group little neighborhood dynamic, because I had a buddy, he had a great arm, and we had a few other guys and whatever. But then all of a sudden you go into this larger dynamic, okay, the world, and then I'm like, wait a minute, now there's all of this competition, and then the cream was here, and this is all this. So I can relate that to on the physical plane, just to the intellectual plane, on the emotional plane, on the right this your maturity plane, the decision making plane, all those and all these specialties. So that's what I want to share. But it's like perfect because you were trying to show that everybody can help everybody, and no matter how. When you said like they're not ready to like address that, but they're really good at this other area. And it may be even what they really need to do is kind of still hindering what they need to do, but there's going to be a breakthrough eventually. It's so many repetitions you can make, right? That you make these realizations. And hopefully, I mean, the work you're doing is just fantastic. So let me ask you, so what are the challenges to educate the public on your current efforts? I mean, how are you getting the word out? Is this a lot of just word of mouth and these other nonprofits that you kind of like you guys feed off each other and your efforts? What are your efforts on the ground?
So one of the things that I think from the education standpoint that we're always struggling to kind of educate folks is on the surface, our program seems very structured, very unforgiving, very you got to commit. And as you have more and more out-of-state companies that are coming in and using the Medicaid system to treat. And I'm not saying that they're, great programs. They're not great programs. I'm not criticizing that at all. It's just that what their thought is, and to get more clients, is to give them what they want, right?
Right.
You want to do telehealth? Sure, because of after COVID, there's a certain allowance of telehealth that was not allowed before. And so now there's companies that are actually based on their whole philosophy is I'm doing a group, I'm sitting at my home with a nice top, who knows what kind of pants, because it doesn't matter. I'm doing telehealth. And then I've got 12 people around the city or state that are theoretically on their phone paying attention, sitting on their bed, sitting on their couch, sitting on their back porch. Is that better than nothing? Probably. But is that really the best that we can do in the treatment side?
Right.
And it's not what becomes the most cost efficient and the most profitable and the most grow the company. It's what's best for the client has to be what comes first, and then figure out a way of getting that to happen.
Right. The analogy is like, okay, we're used to this now, if it's Medicare and all these, when you talk about these other companies coming in and like, okay, this is what, the pie's out of the oven. Okay. We have this big, nice, big warm piece of pie, and it's attractive enough for people that maybe need to kind of help that we need. And then you're saying, right, it's like, okay, everybody get ready. The pie, there's going to be so many, there's so many slices of it, and this is what you got. But then there's some pie that I relate to. I'm just using an analogy of like this. It's almost like the 3/4, like you can condition and get people, both the providers and the people that are potentially receiving that help, to just kind of get conditioned into like, oh, that's the norm. Yeah. That's all there is. That's the pie. That's our help, no other. And it sounds like Full Circle is going, hey, we're a unique quarter of this pie and the big of the full circle. I love your full circle concept, man, because, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but ultimately, you know, that typical mindset, right? You're either at your top, falling, you're at dirt bottom, or climbing up. And the idea is, let's be in the center. So your current efforts, so where can people get more information on just kind of like practical information to kind of study up on, and or is there like a specific links that you have for people that are like, they're on the street, like, here, just call this number or something like that? Do you have kind of helplines, or what, how does that work?
So the intake number, and Shane, do you have that? 800-829-5461. 800-829-5461.
And that's for like,
that's our intake. And so our entire outreach team is connected to that. So regardless of whether it's during hours or after hours, there's somebody covering that phone. And what they'll do is they'll immediately see whether we can help you the most. One of the things that if a nurse pulls up on an accident and they see somebody's arm dangling off the arm and off the bone, and they say, well, I'm a nurse, I'm not really a doctor, but I'll do the best I can. They're not helping that person. What they need to do is get them to a doctor that can help, right? And so what we want to do is we want to help the ones that we can help. But if there is a piece of that, whether it's something that we don't have the ability to treat, or we don't have the facilities for a certain kind of thing, we want to refer them to the doctor who can do that piece. If we can help them, we're absolutely going to do it. But that's where that phone call comes first. We say, are you going to be a good fit for us? Are we going to be able to help you the best? If so, absolutely, let's get you in quickly. I've got an appointment, and let's get you into the program. And then, unfortunately, part of what we do is they'll finish the program or get partway through it. They weren't quite ready yet. We have many graduates say the first time I was trying to do it on my terms.
yeah,
Right. The second time I did it on the program's terms, and what a difference! Because I have to be able to trust the program. I've got to be able to put myself in there.
Do you have percentages of people return like that? That you're obviously you're speaking from kind of data, right?
So from our graduates, we have about 20 to 25%, depending on the month, are repeat customers. And we tell them we find it extremely sad that you needed come back. We are thrilled that you came back to us, right? We wish you didn't have to come back because of relapse or because of whatever. But since you did, we love the fact that you came back home. Let's fill out the pieces. We sit down with you and say, what did we miss the first time? What could we have strengthened up, right? And look, we don't say this in the industry because we think 15 months is fantastic.
Right.
15 months is a crucial time. That's a time where you begin to think, as a recovering addict, I've mastered this. I've got a good job now. I've got a place to live. I've got my friends back. My parents gave me the alarm code again, right? Maybe I wasn't even an addict.
Right.
And once you say that,
yes,
and you say, I think I got this from here. And once you do that, it's a very risky time. And so we try to encourage people, not only for the moment, not only for the 4 months, the 5 months, the 6 months, but when you hit that 15 to 18 month time, make sure that you are rooted in a social circle, in a sober circle, in a supportive circle, and making sure that through either our alumni program or you have the right people that are around you, your sponsors, your friends that encourage sobriety. That's when you need them the most, when you don't have the other things going on, right? When you're day in and day out, always around the same support, it's easier. And so looking at that, I think that's where people we would be more than welcome for families. If they're interested in reaching out and finding out a little bit more about us, we can do some tours of the facilities. Of course, we have the HIPAA things that we have to be aware of, and there has to be signatures of permissions and all of those things. And of course, we follow everything to the T when it comes to rules wise. But we can still do a lot of informational kind of education. We work with families of addicts, the FOA. We've been working with them for a long time. They're a wonderful organization that supports the other side of the addicts, right? Is helping to understand that if grandma gives you $25 every time you ask, that's probably not the best thing for you. right? And so even though you loved your grandson or your nephew or your niece, it's how can I be the best help,
Right.
not how can I ease the aggravation at this point.
Two things, along the lines of when I talked about, my particular program and being able to have like a track and this something to be explored on your kind of like the regular goings on of each of these segments or these individuals that are these professionals that are helping care at different aspects of their recovery and their channels of their strengths. But when you said about your percentage of people coming back for the second time, it sounds like it'd be interesting data to really get hardcore. I'm sure you do this surveys on like what where's the percentages or what's that information data showing where the first time when you said they were trying to make it on their terms, like where was that shortcomings or where was that those avenues of doubt or whatever, and with that information then even a more fine-tuned, because obviously right if you got them once, that is like magnificent data compared to a person that just comes blind in, either comes in and passes, goes in success rate, or just complete failure.
Right.
So you have that, I'm sure you guys have realized that, but again, I'm just speaking from my own head because I'm a guy, I think on the fly, in that the program I'm talking about you could even like use that information specifically for those people that are like, this is our second time. Okay, how can we really target what information we know on from most people, but then also as an individual to do that. So that's it's interesting to me because I'm all about detail.
And we have that counseling with the people that come back in the second time is where was it that happened? And that's where we came up with that 15 to 18 month seems to be kind of a normal thing, which is why we started the Overcomers program, which is we get investors to buy houses. Our program manages the house for them, so they don't have to pay a manager. They take care of basic maintenance. They get a 1% return on 1% a month, which is a great return on rentals these days. And then we handle everything kind of for them. But what we do then is we rent once they're beyond graduation and once they're basically out of the program in general, they're on a maintenance plan at that point, and they could just be left alone, but now they still have 3 evictions on their record or their 483 credit score or, whatever those situations are.
Right.
We say, wait a minute, we can take a group of construction workers and we can take a 4-bedroom house and we can rent them together, the 4 of them rent the house. They each have their own private bedroom. They share the house. They're responsible for the chores of the house. And then the house manager, whoever's running that house, is geared. These are construction workers. Another one may be a bunch of single dads. So every other Saturday is family day, and we do a cookout or whatever.
Nice.
So each house kind of has its own topic, its own focused on the people there. And they can stay there indefinitely then. At that point, they're renting, they're paying rent. But their evictions, we judge them on who they are now, not on who they were.
Right.
And that has been successful because of that data that showed that that's when they needed us still.
Right.
Even though we say, they graduated the program, fantastic success, right? And no, we've got to be there for them still, available 15 months out. And having continued success from that point.
Well, John, I have to applaud you for your tenacity because people like you and you not only obviously individually have had this passion. You've been able to generate a force behind you, obviously with your son too. So shout out to Chris. I'll meet him soon. It's very admirable. It's a wonderful thing, and it just goes to show you that fortitude and that what if, and no matter, it's a shining example of like the naysayers like, well, what are you doing? That will never work. I mean, to me, that sounds like a school administrator that is back in the office and just looking at the numbers or something and not looking at the actual real-time situation, which you obviously are on the ground. And, I think you know what it feels like to have your feet on the earth, right?
Yeah.
And feeling the energy of the earth and people around you in that community. So that's a beautiful thing. So I think that that goes back to when I saw the open flame thing, man. Squatting around the fire, man. It's all about, it takes a village. So again, I applaud you. Is there anything else that you would like to share today?
Just as I'm kind of talking about, we do this. I don't want that impression to be like, oh, I'm doing this, right? Vision started, yes, I have a lot of the drive, but the team that's behind me, that's with me, has been absolutely tremendous, right? Our clinical director, our assistant medical director, our facilities. There's so many different pieces of this leadership puzzle that have come together to make this happen that there's just no way that, that ever could have been by myself. So I don't want that impression.
No, not at all. Listen. Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, they started somewhere.
Yeah.
And then, right, it's a given that when you reach a community like that, you're going to, people are drawn to natural leaders.
Yeah.
To, right, fair, square, innovative, motivated, have a vision. Don't let people stop you.
Yeah.
People are inspired by that. I'm sure even Cheyenne over here can agree with that, that, it's all inspiring. And, keep up the good fight. So, again, thank you so much for spending time with us here at Imagine Fitting In. All about mentors, healthy lives, and community. And you hit the mark right. I mean, I'm going to say that you are my first and exactly the kind of organizations that I were looking to spearhead on my show to feature. So it's an honor and a privilege.
Well, let's say when this podcast comes out,
yep,
you mark 6 months after that, and go ahead and pencil me in to come back so that we can talk together about what our collaboration is doing, what your program is, how that's changing our people. That'll give us 6 months to work on it, to get something going with it, and that gives us a timeline. And so let's do that. 6 months from the time that this comes out, we've got 6 months to figure it out and make it work together.
John, you're a hell of a leader. All right. It's been a pleasure, my friend. All right. So big shout out to all of Full Circle organization. The leader has we call it, continued to shake the tree and to realize that the sun is shining, the snow has been melting, and there's more fruit to be had and success. So again, thank you so much.
Right. Thank you.
All right, John. All right, guys. We'll see you next time, kids. Bye-bye. We want to thank you, listeners, for all your support, your ongoing efforts to become a brand ambassador for Imagine Fitting In. There's a number of ways that you can support our efforts here. Number one is share it on your social media link. Share the episode, please. And be sure to hit the link, hit the button, subscribe button on YouTube. And we are also available on Apple and Spotify. And number two, you can please consider making any donation that you feel comfortable with. It's always appreciated to advance our efforts here and even increase the level of production and bring you more and more great guests from here in Dayton, across the country, and even around the world. So thank you again for those who have donated to date, and you can find the link in our show notes. And then finally, number three, I love the idea of guest referrals. So if you know anyone who has a great story, would like to share their efforts in the community, about their work, their contributions, their efforts, from all mediums. We love a good story. Mentors playing a huge role in all of our lives. And here at Imagine Fitting In, we're trying to highlight the importance of mentors and encourage more of that, the same, to our young people in this community and potentially, extended area. And please consider that. We'd love to hear from you. Again, the show notes, you can reach me at thebalanceprofessor@gmail.com, and we hope to hear from you. So again, we hope you enjoyed this episode. It's always a blast. I feel it's a pleasure and an honor and privilege to be doing what I'm doing. So I look forward to hearing from you. And again, please enjoy, share, subscribe, donate, and become a brand ambassador and even just refer a guest. So thanks again. You take care. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.
Professor.